Alrighty, I'm here today with Adrian Rae, who is the founder and owner of Heyraise, which is a marketing agency specifically for or focused on capital raisers who have. You said they do all sort. You do all sorts of different asset classes, but mainly real estate. Is that right?
Yeah, seems to be our most recurring client is in the real estate space, but open to any alternative asset.
Nice. Okay. So, how did you get started in marketing? Like, what was the very first thing that you were doing in the field?
I was actually going in on a deal with some partners, and we needed to formulate a company between the three of us coming together. We needed to look buttoned up. We were a bit of a little scrappy crew. We had various experience levels, and I was given the marketing hat. That was my role. So when I formed that company, I did like our company overview decks. People could get familiar with us. We came up with a name, did the branding, um, basically did all of the things, went through the whole process. And then from there, we didn't end up acquiring that deal. The seller ultimately backed out. But then other people came up to me as well, and they wanted help. They're like, "Hey, can you help us with our pitch deck?" And you would say you can see one thing led to another, but I was also at a point in my previous career where I knew I wanted to be able to make a choice, whether I stayed on that path or if I pursue real estate, which I've always been very passionate about. But I was in a completely different field. I mean, I was in media production, so there were a lot of concepts that carried over, for sure, and that's what helped me establish the foundation of the way I think about branding and marketing. But it became a relatively easy transition once I knew that I was going to be leaving that prior industry and I was going to be jumping into this full time. Once I committed, it's been smooth, smooth sailing ever since would be a total lie, but it's been a lot of fun ever since. It's been an adventure.
Nice. So, really, your first deal you were just doing the marketing for. You just kind of like jumped right into like, okay, this is my role in the deal. I got to get the marketing
Yeah.
done. I mean, that shows you how important marketing is in a deal that someone's going to be a partner for doing that.
Yeah, it's a big piece of it. And, since I've started Heyraise, I have agreed to work on other raises through my own like fund to funds model. And I have experienced the same time demands and struggles that my clients come to me for. And um, and it just occurred to me is like I know why my clients come to me because this is hard. It requires a lot of time to get on all of those calls to have everything prepared, and ultimately I decided my best contribution to the industry, if my personal goal is to help spread access to private placement investments and alternative assets and help people have a path to invest in real estate passively so that they don't have to work, show up in an office in exchange for dollars. If that is my ultimate goal, which it is, then this is the role where I can best serve the most amount of people as the founder and owner of Heyraise, providing these services. So I just, focused on what my goal was and said, all right, this is the lane that I'm going to stay in. I'm helping people raise capital every day for their deals in a variety of ways. So far, Heyraise has already contributed to, I think we've passed 300 million in
Wow.
dollar in capital being raised. So whether that's we've created the pitch deck, we've built the website, somebody's come to us and say we need to open up a fund, we need to look way more presentable. We need to be able to walk into these rooms and have these conversations. We need a company deck, all of those things. And these are their targets. Heyraise has contributed to over 300 million in capital being raised actively right
Wow.
now. So yeah, it's been a huge, huge accomplishment in the 2 years that I've been doing this and building out our team. So it's been an honor to work with so many people. Yeah.
Nice. What's been the most common problem you see, or maybe not problem, maybe the biggest thing that most capital raisers overlook? And, I mean, before they come to you, they're probably just kind of doing it on their own, making their own marketing stuff. What's the biggest thing that you see them doing that's leaving money on the table?
I think dialing in their message. And that might sound a little over, maybe a little vague, maybe a little overused, ambiguous, but I think it really is. There's so many, the amount of people that are moving money into private placements is growing every single day, which is great. That also means they have way more opportunities and way more places to put their money. So if you have a value add multifamily deal, what makes your deal different compared to everybody else's? You're in the Southeast, you're in the Southwest, these hot markets, Sunbelt. There are a lot of opportunities. What's going to make yours stand out And we all know that people invest with people. I mean, anybody listening to this show that's raising capital, they know they've walked up to somebody that they've got a great relationship with and said, hey, I've got this deal. And they said, all right, if you think it's a good deal, I'm going to invest with you. That's because they trust them. They don't need to know all the ins and outs. Many people will, and they want to, and, don't hide that. But a lot of people undervalue what their unique value proposition is and what's going to set them apart to make them a unique opportunity for people to build trust in and hitch their wagon to. You
Right.
really want, you don't need a whole bunch of investors. You just need a small group of raving fans, as they call them, that are willing to hitch their wagon to your game plan and commit to your value proposition. And, I think a lot of that starts with identifying your verbal identity. What is it that you stand for? What is your how can you really cleanly summarize your methodology, your investment strategy, so that you have something that is a bit unique, and hopefully it reflects you as a person and your personal values. Your personality can come through. There's an opportunity for people to connect with you as an individual. I think that's really important, because that's like the foundation. It's going to set the tone for your website. It's going to set the tone for all your social media marketing. When you go on podcast tours to talk about what it is you do, that's going to be the underlying message that needs to come across clearly to potential investors, so that there's no question in their mind, like, what am I getting into? Should I really trust this person? Keep it crystal clear. Filter people out, let people filter in. And, don't be afraid to filter people out. That's
Right.
huge value.
And would you say that most people, when they come to you, they're at the point where they realize, like, hey, just talking about the deal is not getting me where I need to? Because I think a lot of capital raisers are numbers-based people, and we look at a deal from the perspective of, like, this makes sense. Why wouldn't you do this? Like, all the other deals out there are not this good. And then you just find that doesn't work. Like, you would think it does, but at scale, it really doesn't. Like you said, people invest in you, and your limited circle of people is kind of going to be your ceiling until you learn to market yourself in a way that other people can trust you. People who don't know you can learn to trust you and know you through your marketing.
Yeah. And then how you communicate, I think, is really important, because when you do have that deal that is amazing from your perspective, sometimes if you're not conveying what that deal story is, what actually is making this deal unique, like, there's this, and this is why, because of this, you as the investor are going to be receiving this. So you have to string those pieces together that then reframe it in the investor's eyes, that lets them know what benefit is that they're getting. They need to know that, like, okay, you've said all these things. I'm not a real estate person. I don't understand these acronyms that you're using, but how does that affect me? That's their only question. That's all they want to know. It's like, I'm going to give you this money. I need to trust that it's going to be clearly, it's going to be, utilized with transparency, and then I need to know what benefit that is back to me. So the deal story is whatever it may be. We acquired it at this below market rate because of this, because of this. In turn, this is what it will do for you. And that's the pitch. What it does for you is the pitch. And depending on who your target, potential investor is, you would essentially, scale that up or down in terms of sophistication, language being used. You want to meet your investors where they're at. So you're going to cater your story to where that audience is and their real estate investing journey and their knowledge, of course.
Right. So that kind of leads into why it's so important to have one specific target in your marketing, because it's kind of hard to tell a story about multiple different people. So have you found that people have had more success when they narrow down and really only not just try to raise money from everybody with 50,000 in their account, but pretty much this very specific type of person?
Yeah, it definitely helps. And it's not so much that when you do that, you're going to be isolating everybody else, and you're only going to be able to raise from that one demographic. And we could get into demographic versus psychographic, but just because you niche down, it doesn't mean that those are going to be the only people that you'll be able to raise from. It means that you're going to have a very clear, basically message and funnel that you're like shouting into. You're going to have a lot of clarity about how to describe certain things. Ultimately, it's going to resonate with a variety of people. But for yourself, I think that's where the biggest benefit comes. And how do I speak to this? If you give that client, that ideal investor profile, an avatar, name the person, give them personality characteristics, really dial into who they are, you can speak to that one person. And there'll be many people that can identify with that. Even though it feels like you're being so super narrow, there's a range of people that are going to identify.
Right.
But it will really help clarify the message that you need to send.
Right. When it comes to an avatar, do you usually find that it's basically like a clone of who the person is, or is it usually different from the person who's trying to raise money?
It's probably a little bit different. I think there are a lot of similarities, kind of like the backstory as to why you, as an operator or a capital raiser, ventured into this space in the first place. What's driving your motives? You're probably 5 to 10 years ahead of that avatar, of where they are. Not to say that that person is going to want to follow in your path, but they're having those same light bulb moments that you did when you were at your W-2, or, this is a common story for a lot of people that have gotten into real estate. They're probably wondering these same things at this point in their career. So you can be that beacon, that identifier that they can relate to, very crystal clear. So I think there should be similarities, but it's not going to be exactly you where you're at in your personal journey in that moment. But definitely pull from your personal story and let that kind of inspire the background and the foundation of who this avatar is.
Gotcha. So when somebody comes to you and they want to advertise a deal that they've got right away, how much of their success do you think comes from them advertising themselves and their company versus advertising that specific deal and like telling the story of that deal?
I think advertising themselves and their company is the lead up, but it's not so much advertising themselves, it's providing value. So educational webinars, putting out educational material, positioning yourself and your company as a trusted resource where people can get a chance to get to know you. So that when it does come time to raise for a deal, all you have to do is turn on. Basically and by the way, here's an opportunity to invest. Continue providing value and education, but now you're going to be using that deal as an example. Whatever it is you want to talk about. This is how cost segregation works. And we've got a deal where we are applying these principles of cost segregation. We're going to be able to return, we're aiming to return X amount to our investors. If this sounds interesting to you, take this next step. And then now you have a door open for people to take the next step to actually invest. Previously, it's like, book a call, come speak to us. Hopefully you have some engagement type of automations or something there where you can connect the communication channels where they're not just experiencing you one way, you can then speak to them. Mm-hmm. So now that you have a deal, now there's an opportunity for them to walk through a door and actually take action. So you're like basically setting up, you're raising all the time, but what you're providing when you don't have an active deal is more of an education and value so that people can build trust.
Gotcha. So are there any tips that you would have for somebody who maybe doesn't have like a really extensive track record? Like maybe they've never done a deal mm-hmm. and they want to market themselves and they want to market the deal. Is there something that those type of people can do at that point? Like, is it their background, what they did outside of it that helps?
Yeah. Be completely honest about where you're at in your journey and who you're working with. Nobody's doing real estate alone. So mm-hmm. you're going to have a lender, you're going to have, maybe somebody's helping you with underwriting, whoever you're working with, talk about their contribution to the opportunity. Talk about the seller. Why do you know, how did you find this deal? How did you acquire it? Talk about the channels that you worked in order to get the deal. That's just going to show that you're well connected. You've got people that are supporting you and you know what you're talking about. You're taking all the actions to acquire this deal. You've done the work. So have confidence in yourself as well, that you do know what you're doing. And you've got resources and advisors and mentors that are there to help you along the way. So when you have that deal on your lap as a first-time capital raiser or operator, lean on the team, come together, show yourselves as a strong unit. That's really important. And position yourself as a group effort. And I think that will, you'll be able to leverage other people's experience and that's the honest truth. You're going to be leveraging their experience throughout the process anyways.
Yeah.
So it just comes down to honesty, transparency, and authenticity.
Right. So you've said, I've heard you say multiple times before that brand is not a logo. So I am not super, educated when it comes to marketing. To me, they kind of seem like the same thing. So to you, why do you distinguish those two things?
Okay, let's use Aspen Ridge because you've got this awesome hat on
Right
with
here.
a beautiful logo that I'm very familiar with.
Yes.
And I love it. And I know that that makes you feel so much more buttoned up, having this icon as an identifier. Like, this is what we stand behind. And that's the right attitude that you should have about your logo. You should have that much confidence and pride in your logo. But the reality is, what we also did was we took the essence of Aspen Ridge and what that logo represents, and we wove it into your website. From the colors, the styling, the language that's being used, and your verbal brand identity of what you now stand behind as Aspen Ridge. There's so much more to what went into just that symbol than than just what the symbol is. So the brand is the experience that people have when they interact with you. It's when they interact with your social media, they see your posts, they pick up the phone and talk to you for the first time, you're on a webinar or a podcast, and your energy and your body language is coming across. All of these things are part of your brand experience. And that's where people begin to really feel a connection with Aspen Ridge and with Jeff Flynn. That's how they really get to know you. So it is so much more than a logo. And if that's where your efforts start and stop, you're missing a lot of opportunity to build much deeper relationships with people. So
Right.
yeah.
Yeah. And for anybody listening, you made this logo for me. So they're just like, how do you know so much about it? But yeah, it's crazy because the process, I'll be honest, I thought it'd be way simpler than it was. And that's not as like a bad thing. Like I was impressed with how much time and effort goes into thinking about it. It was, it was, what do you call it? A brand, not a brand board. Yeah, like all the pictures of different like
The mood
things like
board.
mountain. Yeah, it was
Yeah, we have a mood
fascinating.
board for
Like, to
you.
me, I had gone on Google and just said logo creator website, and I made this little one that was like, okay. And it wasn't like this one's much more complex, but it's just like way more accurate. Like it actually has meaning behind it. It actually makes sense.
It makes sense.
And it fits me, which is all I asked for. Like I didn't want to have some random, logo that made no sense, but it was really interesting to me to see how much work goes into something so simple, because it seems like it's just 5 minutes, but it's not. It's way longer than that.
It is. It is. And I appreciate you recognizing that because it's, it's so easy nowadays to just go to an AI logo generator tool. And if that's where you're at in your business, if it's day one, go do that. Go do that so that you feel like you have something, because you learn so much, Jeff, probably from like the years prior of you working in real estate to the point where you met me. You were probably you're at a much different point, and you had a much clearer direction of where you wanted to go and what you wanted to accomplish. And that vision that you had allowed us to create this brand that truly identifies with you and your audience. If you came to us on day one, you'd be like, I want to buy real estate. It's like, okay, you don't know enough quite yet on day one to really mold a brand that truly represents you. So it's not always the best move to go pour a bunch of money into creating a whole brand identity. You got to learn a little bit along the way. And this may not be every marketer or brand agency's opinion. This is my opinion. Get started and learn a lot. Do some deep thinking about who you are. I think we did like almost an hour and a half to 2 hour long workshop where you fill out a very robust worksheet and really had to sit and think about who your current investors are, who your dream investors are, their problems, their challenges, where's the intersect of your personal values. And that's where we really focused. How do we connect with who's already investing with you and identify what your overlapping values are. And that's how we came to this point of creating the visual identity for Aspen Ridge. And yeah, it feels like you because it should. And it does. It's youthful. It's not that typical. It's not what you think a real estate investment firm should look like. It's what Jeff Flynn this business
Yeah,
looks like.
exactly. I always joke with people like I'm a guy in his garage because that's exactly factually what I am doing. But it is different than that, right? I mean, and that's what I try to be, and I think that's what resonates with the people I talk to. They realize like, hey, this is not some guy with a Patagonia vest in New York who's trying to sell me on
Right.
something that he has no idea what he's talking about. He's like doing this all day. I just get to ride along. Like it's a really
Yeah.
it's a lot more than just like a logo, like you said. But like, let's
Yeah.
say there's somebody, because I know some people out there who have a pretty good amount of success and they don't have branding, logos, anything like that. That's just their name. Like, what would you tell that people? What would you tell that person the differences between like sitting down and really putting thought into their branding versus just continuing to just not do that?
Well, it depends on where they want to go and with the success that they're having right now. Is this working for you? If what you're experiencing right now works, keep it that way. Some people have a lot of very wealthy people in their back pockets, and they can get away without having to reach out to further extended retail investors. They're not probably thinking about crowdfunding and trying to attract outsiders into their world. They are still doing deals based off of handshakes, long-term relationships, and that's all well and good. And if that's what they believe they're able to maintain and keep pursuing, then why change? Why
Right.
now's not the time to talk about it. Don't wait until it's too late to talk about it. If you're starting to see the market shifting, you might want to start taking some steps. But I mean, that would be the biggest thing is like if they really do feel like in the future they need to expand to a broader audience, they should start making those moves now because it takes time to really figure out what that brand's going to look like, how they're going to reshape their business to be more public facing, what's their outward marketing strategy going to be. And that's when most people come to me. They've been using, some sort of a logo or nothing previously, and maybe their biggest investor moved out of the city, and now that investor has other options. They lost their top 2 or 3 investors just because they're pursuing other opportunities, or distance. People are all remote, So whatever the reason is, then they come to me saying, okay, now I need to actually go meet people. I need to put myself online as much as I don't want to. Most people don't want to be doing that, but they're real estate guys at the end of the day, or gals. So yeah, it's that point where they realize, okay, I can't keep doing this on handshakes. I'm running out of handshakes. So now I
Yeah.
need to be more appealing to a broader audience.
Right. Is there any difference in marketing that you've noticed that is specific to different assets? Like, does oil and gas have a different type of marketing than multifamily or anything like that you've noticed as like a typical trend?
I think the deal story and the advantages of investing in one over the other, you'll highlight different things, but marketing as a strategy is basically a recipe. No matter what you're trying to market, if you follow the same recipe, you'll find success. At the end of the day, it's being omnipresent. Because when somebody wants an opportunity to invest in something, if you're there in front of them, if you're the option that they see, that they have grown to know, like, and trust, you'll be highly considered as their investment option. And that all boils down to effective marketing, no matter what your asset class or what you're trying to accomplish. So, and that's really why we focus on just about any alternative asset, because we're playing within the rules of 506C, 506B, or crowdfunding. These are the laws that we've got to follow when we're marketing deals. So that's really the boundaries, but all those rules apply to alternative assets.
Right. And that brings up another good point. How important would you say it is for somebody to work with someone like yourself who's actually in the business and understands that, like, hey, he has a 506B deal. You can't just advertise whatever you want versus like just going to a generic marketing agency or, your cousin who does marketing and just having them work
Right.
with you. Like, what is the biggest advantage to working with someone who understands capital raising?
Well, I think it's incredibly important, which is part of the main reason why I started this agency, because I was seeing a big disconnect between generic marketing firms trying to speak the language of real estate investing, whether they were following the rules or not, who knows. But Yeah, I think it's huge. It's on one hand, you can work with whomever you want. If you want to be the one dictating the next step to take, every move, proofreading everything, making sure that your language is, SEC compliant, versus I can turn a blind eye to this marketing, go focus on my underwriting, have investor calls, host the webinars, do what I need to do on my end, and just trust that this marketing agency knows what they're doing because they've done it before. This is the space that they stay in, that they live in. So I don't need to be the one dictating every move and
Right.
every strategy. I think that's the biggest difference, and that's the value that we try to bring. Is that by the time we do give you something to review, it's already gone through multiple iterations on our end from a creative standpoint. Our language is dialed. Actually, a lot of times clients want us to dial it up. My default is going to be SEC compliant. We're going to push it as much as we can without stressing any language. So sometimes clients want, we need to amp this up some more. It's like, if you want to, that's on you. So that's one thing something that we run into. But the message gets across regardless. You just want to get the message across. So yeah, to answer your question, Jeff, I think it's very important, and that's the gap that we aim to fill.
Yeah, and it would seem to me like it could be a huge risk if you didn't do that, because you wouldn't even think twice about just having somebody do the marketing, be like, oh, great. And then next thing you know, they said something in a way, or like you said, maybe you catch it, but maybe it's too late. Maybe it's like, okay, well, they did all that work. They came up with the final result, and that we can't use half of it because of how they said it, what they said. Because it's like you said, it's very particular. Some of the SEC stuff makes sense. Some of it I don't think does, but you have to follow it. So you have to basically know what you're doing, but
Yeah. And, if you send an email, are they going to come after you with one offense or something like that? No, but, if there's ever a reason for somebody to flag something, you don't want to give them any reasons to further investigate and go digging, So play a clean game from the start and don't even worry about that.
right.
That's my rule of thumb. Yeah.
What would you say is the biggest difference between just general advertising, like, hey, I don't have a deal right now, but I want to talk about what we do, versus, hey, we've got a deal and we need to advertise this deal? Like, what is the biggest stark difference that you've noticed in those two types of advertising?
Probably 80-20 and 20-80. So when you don't necessarily have a deal, you're pushing more general value, knowledge, becoming a platform that people can trust, build a relationship with you, more personal stories. 20% actually saying, this is our market, this is where we invest. If you are interested in this type of an opportunity, let us know for the next time we have a deal. Now, you've got to be a little more aggressive on your raise. So now you're going to be talking about, this is our deal that we have. 80% of your time you're going to be speaking more specifically about that, but don't neglect value, education, and personal stories. Don't neglect those opportunities to let people connect with you. The thing is, you've got this time crunch. You've only got maybe 60 days, whatever that window is, to raise the capital. So as much as you still only want to sell 20% of the time, the reality is you got to get more aggressive with it.
Right.
So the pendulum needs to switch a little bit.
Right. What would you say some of the biggest difference was between somebody who's trying to raise for themselves, like, you've got a deal, you're raising for it, versus somebody who is a co-GP or a fund of funds person who's raising for somebody else? Is there a difference in how that marketing is approached?
Well, yeah, I think, for the co-GP person, they're obviously pumping up the operators and saying, this is why I'm hitching my wagon, why I'm hitching my wagon to them. These are the people that I believe in. This is why they're great at what they do. That's their story. Probably a lot more education as well. I find that fund-to-fund managers tend to have more of an audience that isn't quite as educated on the nuances of real estate investing. So there's more education that goes into bringing their audience, kind of up to speed about what it means, the different metrics of the deal. I think that's one of the biggest differences, is that not always, but a fund-to-fund audience tends to require a little more education. I don't get too many fund to fund managers as my clients because a lot of the assets, marketing assets, do come from the operators, and
Right.
then we'll create variations for their specific fund managers with swap out logos and change a few introductory team slides like that. But yeah.
Gotcha. Why do you think that is? Why do you think more fund of funds people have to do more education?
I think that's a really good question. And I think it's because, I guess this would be my theory, that I think it's a really interesting and lucrative way for people who are interested in real estate to start getting their foot in the door. Maybe they've been an LP before, maybe they're operators on other deals as well, but it's sort of an augmentation of, or like it helps supplement their capital raising efforts. Maybe, income on raising capital as a fund manager is prolonged. It's not necessarily an immediate gain. But with that probably comes their network of former colleagues, their network of friends. And, they may not have come up through the ranks of as a lender or mortgage broker or working within real estate. So I think more often that's just what you see where they have a background in a different industry. And so they've got a network of people that are intrigued that this person that they knew in this capacity is now working in this capacity as a fund manager, and they want to figure out what's going on. As a fund manager, you're sharing your story now about how you've been a passive investor, you're investing in these deals. So there's a lot of personal relationships that come with that, and in turn a lot of education about here's why you guys, my audience, should also be investing, why you may want to consider investing passively in real estate, in particular this deal that I am now raising for.
I guess that makes sense. If you're an operator, you probably have more time in real estate. You probably know more people who at least know real estate in some degree. Like I think I did the math the other day. I was like 40% of the investors I've got at this point own their own mobile home park themselves. So it's not like they're just some guy off the street. Like they know it really well, and I know them from some sort of relationship over the last couple of years because I'm in the industry. So that makes sense. Like you'd have to do more education and get people up to speed on like this is what an IRR is, like this is what a cap rate is, or whatever it has to be that pertains to them.
Yeah.
What have you seen is like the most difficult thing for somebody to communicate, like a real estate person to communicate and market to somebody who knows nothing about real estate? Like what's the most common concept you see that like people just don't understand?
Oh, that's interesting. Well, I mean, you could really get in the weeds on like levered IRR versus unlevered IRR, cash, cost segregation. I think the tax benefits can be a little bit murky. I think those are often misrepresented.
Right.
As a passive investor, it's your earned capital on that deal that has the tax advantages. So I think that's something that gets misrepresented very often. Yeah, that's a really good question, Jeff. That's probably what I would go with, tax, because that's the one that most people get into this most frequently looking for, thinking that they're going to get.
Right.
But, it's a great investment, and you get the tax advantages on that investment.
Yeah, and the tax one is confusing because it's like you have to explain to somebody. It's like, we're going to have all these losses, and so you're going to benefit. And like, well, I don't want to lose money. It's like, well, you're not going to lose money, right? It's going to go up. I mean, it might go, but we're buying this deal because we think it's going to go up in value. Yet we're going to claim that it goes down in value. That I have found is like if somebody's like a W-2 background, that is so hard for them to understand because that just makes no sense. Business people get it right away. They're like, oh, okay. But if you're, even high level executives at companies, like that just does not compute. It's very interesting. It's a strange concept. It doesn't make sense.
Yeah.
But that's what the IRS said we do. So that's what we do.
Yeah. And, it's unique to the industry with bonus depreciation and cost segregation, all these different strategies that come together to create this tax advantage. And it's like one of the greatest benefits of investing in real estate. It's why it's such a lucrative asset to invest in. And it really is like the added layer that makes it additionally sweeter. So it's important for people to understand because there's a huge benefit there when you factor that on. But yeah, it's hard to wrap your head around it if it's not something that you're used to on a daily basis.
Right. People think it's like cheating a lot of times. Like
Right.
my brother-in-law's girlfriend was like, "That doesn't sound right." We're like, "No, that's right." You know, we've done a couple
Yeah.
years in a row, but it sounds so wrong to really really smart people. But you know,
Yeah.
it's
I
just
mean,
kind
these
of what it
are
is.
all the ways that incentivize all the ways that the government is incentivizing private money to boost housing, to create housing. So the tax code is a fat book of incentives. And if you read it and you know how to follow these incentives and piece them together and follow the strategies, you've got a sweet opportunity to create value that the government and that you know population needs. And that's what they want to see. They want you to use it in that way. But
Right.
it's hidden in this massive book of boring language. So,
Right.
yeah.
So one of the another question. So you probably see a lot of operators who are going from the point where like, hey, they're raising money for their own deals, or like them and a partner raising money for their own deals, to getting to the point where they want to start relying on people beneath that, like a fund of funds manager or co-GP. So from their perspective as the operator, what are some differences you see in their marketing at that perspective that allow them to give the people that are the fund of funds and co-GPs all the tools they need to effectively raise for them?
Yeah, I mean, now they need to advertise, market to fund managers, start meeting more fund managers, and that's probably a better use of their time because these effective fund managers are going to have the broader networks where they've already established trust with their audience. So, on one hand, it's a massive benefit for operators to switch to that model because you're no longer trying to meet a million people, 100 people to invest in your deal. You can meet 5 or 6 fund managers, bring them on board, and structure your deal in a way that gives them a slice of that waterfall component. So that's it's probably easier, honestly, to now focus your efforts on those fund managers. Some things that might be different when you are doing a webinar, and this depends on how kind of advanced you want to get with it. You can set up your webinars where it's sort of pre-recorded. You pop in, they're leading their own audience, and then they play your portion of the webinar, and then you could come in for Q&A at the end. Something you could get kind of fancy with it, the way you want to set up the webinars, so that otherwise you may have to do individual webinars or bring all of your fund managers on board at one time, so everybody's there. That's fine too. The structure of it is just a little bit different. And then maybe you want to provide your fund managers with the marketing language. Depends on how much support your fund managers need and what type of fund managers you're bringing under your wing. Newer ones tend to need more support in that regard. What is the language that we need? We need your pitch deck, setting up their fund. So, from zero all the way to getting them ready to go to even raise, as opposed to other fund managers who have been in the game for a while. They may already have the language that they send out to their audience. There's lots of trust there. All they need to know are the details of the deal, and they're good to go. So, it really depends on who you're working with.
Gotcha. So like the general partner in that perspective, are you saying that they don't necessarily have to market to attract fund of funds people? Like they don't have to market directly to a fund of funds person, but they have to set up their marketing so that it's easy for a fund of funds person to basically, for lack of a better word, piggyback off that and use that for their own marketing? Is that kind of what you're saying is like
In a way.
Okay.
Yeah. Yeah. You're not necessarily selling the deal to fund managers. You would have already had those conversations before the raise. They're already on board. But now you're thinking about setting up your pitch deck will be about the same as it typically is. But now you're incorporating, maybe shifting a couple slides, like the team slide, the intro slide, the cover slide. Things like that are going to be a little bit different to incorporate those fund managers. And then when that fund manager is using your deck to present to their audience, they may want to shift the track record or the, not like the metrics on the track record, but how they introduce the operator. This is our operator's track record. Things that the positioning is just slightly shifted so that the perspective changes, so that the fund manager can present this deck that represents them as being a component, a part of this deal, and not just, hey, I've got this opportunity that I swear I'm part of it. You want them to be included and, feel like they are a real part of it so that their audience can trust that they have a real role. and the
Yeah, it
opportunity.
seems like it's getting really popular for people to rely on, or not to, that sounds bad to say rely, but like people use fund of funds manager, but not really think it through. And so I feel bad for a lot of these fund managers because they're basically showing a pitch deck that every investor sees. And it's like that, they're just going to confuse themselves. Like, well, what are you doing in all this? You know? And so
Yeah.
it's a weird space, but I definitely think, doing it the right way is super effective.
Yeah, I think if somebody's really trying to establish themselves as a fund manager and build their career, it would behoove them to set up their own pitch decks and their own branding and really take ownership of the conversation. And so that they can establish a lot of trust with their audience. And we've done that for clients, fund managers that have come in and said, hey, this is the operator's deck. I don't like it. I mean, oftentimes these decks get a bit over templatized and overused and things get a little wacky. So we took their branding of their website, applied it, reconfigured some things, pulled out what's really relevant to their audience as well, and highlighted those features. The specific things, the questions that their audience asks them, we made those more of the central focus of the deal and that particular that deck and that particular deal. So that's a really good strategic move for fund managers to consider to establish their own brand and not just feel like they're always piggybacking the operator's deal.
Right. So it still gives them a lot of credibility too.
Yeah.
And it allows
Yeah.
people to feel like, because fund managers do a very important part. Sometimes from an investor's perspective, they just kind of seem like a middleman. And if it just kind of, it usually just comes down to the marketing. People say, well, why can't I just invest with them? And I don't know. My wife and I have invested with a fund of funds manager. They did phenomenal. Like I felt like by the end of it, I was like, I feel lucky to be allowed in this. Like, it seems like, man, that, there's no way I could ever do it by myself, so they did a really good job of communicating that, like, hey, this is why you work with me. And it made total sense. So if it's done well, it can be a huge plus.
And that's the level of trust, like that experience, that's what you want as a fund manager. That's what you want your investors to walk away with. You want to be the one that they go to, that they can trust, that you are vetting the deals, you're vetting the operator. When there's a new operator that comes across for a potential investor to evaluate, there's so many questions that come up. And now it's suddenly this passive investment opportunity has turned into a full-time job. And that's not really what the pitch is, if you will, as an LP.
Yeah.
It's passive. So how can you help make that an even more of a passive experience, become a trusted, reliable fund manager that really is vetting deals, vetting the operators, and knows how to answer the questions that your target audience has. How does this opportunity really fit into their strategy?
Right. Is there a difference you see in marketing between people who are raising for a deal versus raising for a fund? Like that they're just going to go out and buy a bunch of deals? Is it more track record focused? Is it more just general asset, class focused?
Yeah. Well, I mean, I think there is more track record. I think it depends on the fund. A lot of funds tend to have longer timelines. So you don't have the same speed of which you need to blast out communications. So you have more opportunity to promote yourself in a more ongoing manner. And then we have an open fund. You're constantly letting them know about this fund that you're raising for. And the track record really is what I'm hearing that is a big part of the conversation. And any hesitations that people have when it comes to these funds, like, well, how do I know that this is actually, you're going to be able to return these deals? Because you're acquiring various properties. They don't really know what it is. Maybe there's a specific market that you're focusing on and a specific, metrics of the deal that you're looking for. But it's hard to really justify what you're claiming to be the return profile when there isn't a specific opportunity for them to look at. Exactly. You've got sample deals, usually.
Yeah.
So track record really does come into play. And that's really important, for sure.
Nice. Yeah, it seems like a difficult one because you have to, that's something I've personally been looking at doing. It's like, okay, well, maybe we do a fund because we keep doing these small one-off deals and it's like, man, that's tough to do a lot of.
Yeah.
But it's like a fund, it's like, I've talked to some people who've done a fund and that's the first thing they did. It said, man, it's tough in the beginning if you don't have 10 deals to show for it because people are like saying, well, like, how do you know you're going to do that? right? So
Yeah.
it's tough, right? But I feel like the marketing in that case is only that much more important because you have to really communicate to people, hey, this is why, or this is how, or this is the story. Like
Yeah.
it's not just like here's numbers on a spreadsheet. This is the idea of what we're going after, and you have to sell that.
Yeah. Yeah. If you get started with an initial deal or two to show what the fund is currently producing, I think that always helps showing progress so that people aren't coming into it cold. Like, oh, okay, this is actually producing the results. So yeah, it's
Nice.
it's tough, but it's a great opportunity for the operator to then be able to pursue deals without worrying or wondering, am I going to be able to close this one? Am I going to be able to raise for it? So and
Gotcha.
funds are all structured differently, so there's a lot of
Yeah,
opportunities there.
it
Yeah,
gets confusing fast, very
yeah,
confusing very
yeah.
quickly. What is one of the most unique marketing approaches you've seen somebody take? Like the most unique story that somebody has sold in, in either deals or funds or whatever, that you were surprised with how successful it is. You don't have to like give into the specifics so that people know who you're talking about. Like, but what's something that you've seen where you're like, wow, that is very specific or very unique and highly effective?
I don't know if there's anything too unique these days, but there are a few opportunities I think are under leveraged. I am hearing a lot of opportunity that is still existing on Facebook. So a lot of attention has gone towards LinkedIn, and I think it's becoming very saturated. Plenty of people are having success. Plenty of other people are feeling that they're just speaking out into a void of nothing. I think consistency is the name of the game on LinkedIn. It is across every platform, but I do think that there's a bit of a blue ocean on Facebook, believe it or not, one of the oldest social platforms. That podcasting is still bigger than ever, not new or unique, but definitely a great route to leverage because it gives you an opportunity to create so much content that can then be used across YouTube, of course, Instagram. It, geez, there are so many strategies nowadays. Here's a new one that a lot of people may not be thinking about yet. SEO has always been a huge component of gaining website traffic, but with LLMs now taking over, they're slowly starting to pull attention away from a typical Google Boolean keyword search to now people are putting in their queries directly into ChatGPT. And to answer some of these questions, Chat is scouring the internet. And we've all seen this happen because we're all on ChatGPT and we're all asking it our deepest, darkest secrets. And it goes and searches the internet when appropriate, when it's like, okay, this is something I need to prompt the internet for. And then it comes back with results. Perplexity has been doing this since the dawn of Perplexity. This has always been the thing that they did. And now Chat has incorporated this, Claude is incorporating it. And when you put in questions into Google, Gemini is now pulling responses right there in the search results and tagging back to sources as well. So AI search results are going to be the new way, and the transition away from typical keywording, blue links, backlinks. Not backlinks are still really great, but like don't give up on your traditional SEO. But how you start reframing your blog posts and written content that you have on your site is how you reshape that will allow the large language models to reference your site as a solution to these questions that are being answered. I think a lot of people are conducting their due diligence, their general due diligence about passive investing, alternative asset investing within ChatGPT in these conversations. And when they start to pull references from the internet, if you're answering those direct questions that lead towards actions, which is what the AI is biased towards in their search results, you'll be a source that is referenced. And when they are putting their questions into this platform that they believe is the all-knowing, all trustworthy platform, and they're pulling up your website as evidence of their feedback answer to them, that speaks volume. And I think that's going to produce a lot of really interesting results to people that get on that track of AI search results faster than anybody else.
That's fascinating because what you're saying is 100% true. Like I probably I want to say Google things on ChatGPT. Like that's
Yes.
not what it is. I search things
Right.
on ChatGPT probably 10 times more now than I do on Google.
Yeah.
Like by
Yep.
the time I go to Google, it's just because like I'm frustrated. I told it a million times like, no, that's wrong, that's wrong. But it's
Yeah.
I saw some statistic, and I'm going to butcher it, but basically ChatGPT reached the amount of search volume that it took Google 10 years to do. They did it in about a
Yeah.
year and a half.
Yeah.
Like it just
Exactly
quickly
right.
caught on. And so I wouldn't have even thought of that, but that makes perfect sense. Like if people are changing how they search things, you have to change how you optimize it so that you show up.
Yeah, and another thing to keep in mind is it is different. What Google provides for you are general keyword, like who's talking about this topic the most. Here's where we're finding a lot of resources for that. People go to ChatGPT for answers. They want to know what the next step is.
Yeah.
And that's the speed at which people want to implement and move things nowadays. So everything is moving so fast because they go from having a question to taking action. And if you're able to tell them how to take action on something, and it's not, invest in this deal, it's asking their questions of how do I? Think about what those questions are that people are putting in to chat and answer
How do
those.
I build passive income? Like as a perfect
Exactly.
one.
Exactly. Even how do I, even if you want to break down how to explain the different metrics of a deal or anything of that nature, answer it and give them actions to take, give them the 3-step process of how to do something. That's going to give chat very tangible responses, very clear cut things that chat can then summarize and use your site as a reference.
Right. Now the AI stuff is fascinating. I have a negative outlook of what it looks like in a decade, but right now I'm pretty on board with it because it's helping a lot.
Yeah.
What have you seen it do to the marketing side of things? Because, I'm sure you've seen the Instagram posts where it's like, oh, Burger King just did a commercial completely with AI and all this other stuff. It's just mind-boggling.
Yeah.
But what is as somebody who does it yourself? Like, what is your take on all that?
Well, from the creation of media perspective, commercial, fashion, advertising, I mean, that hits in my gut because I've come up through that industry and I've been an agent representing the artists that create those types of, authentic and artistic driven pieces of commercial work. So, the writing was kind of on the wall when I was leaving the industry that there's a big shift coming and, it's hit, obviously. Now, from marketing, I think the biggest impact that it has is that it has my head spinning in a frenzy every single day. It is pushing everything to move so fast, and people want results so fast. But some things still take time, like earning people's trust and consistency. And, these things still the time still has to go into them. Not everything is instant. Just because you could get an answer directly from AI, you can build a website very quickly using AI, all these things, not everything can still be instant. But for us at Heyraise on a daily basis, I'm constantly trying to stay on top of what the latest AI platform is, not for, idea generating or for copywriting. No, I'm hiring copywriters right now. But it's more about work processes and automation, which isn't necessarily AI. You don't necessarily need AI for that, but it's making automation a lot easier and a lot faster. So it's how can we just produce more faster is the big question, but then how do we maintain quality while we're doing that? And relying on AI for that final output isn't always the answer, not yet. But building the infrastructure around AI is definitely what we're focused on a daily basis.
Right. And I think you hit it on the head when you were talking about it earlier. It's like what the people who succeed today stand out. AI can only get you so far. Like I haven't seen like I'll speak on something I've done. Right. I read a lot of LinkedIn articles. I use AI to format it and make the words sound better because I am horrible at grammar. But it's not AI's idea. Like I can't go in there and just say
Right.
write an article about this. I did that once or twice, 2 likes, like nobody looks at it.
Oh
But
yeah.
when I tell it what to do, because what it does is it pulls from everything out there. And so if you just do that, you're just going to sound like everybody else. There's nothing to
Yeah.
distinguish yourself. But like you said, I can now sit there and tell it a unique idea I have that's different than what everybody else thinks. And it just makes it sound really good really quickly. Like that's a like and like you said, it's about being fast, but not necessarily just creating everything.
Yeah. And the algorithms are now able to identify AI generated content, and they're not necessarily looking to push that because they know it's going to make their platform very watered down, very flat. They still want people
Right.
to come to the platform with unique ideas and perspectives and tones of voice that make it interesting. When I can feel when I'm reading something that somebody actually wrote, and it is so refreshing to read unique words that somebody wrote. And the algorithm is responding because it knows that I am enjoying that post. I'm actually I'm dwelling on it, if you will. I'm reading it, I'm hanging in, and it knows how much time I'm spending on it. So it's pushing that content up to get more visibility. But when
Yeah.
things are generic and it sounds like something that everybody else has been writing, we're all skimming past it. So we
Yeah.
know.
Yeah, and I feel very lucky to be in the mobile home park space because there's no shortage of things that come up that AI would have never thought of. You know,
So
crazy
true.
people in a mobile home park will do things that AI will never be able to recreate. So I feel
Yes.
very lucky that like because I've gotten a lot of people who said like, "Hey, I can tell you right what you do," and it's like I don't type every word. Like I sit there and they tell it exactly like, and I explain the
Mhm.
story and blah blah blah, and it just makes it sound better. But
Yeah.
it is true. Like what you're saying is 100% true. People resonate with that. Do you think it'll get to the point where that changes? Like, do you think people will eventually get to the point where the AI is so good that maybe that doesn't matter?
I think there is a world where the AI gets so good that it is hard to tell, and it's already getting there. I think either that or I've kind of whipped my AI, my ChatGPT, into shape, and it now doesn't say things that it that it otherwise would on a generic account. So you can actually like really craft it. But even still, as much as I do that, as much as I have this huge list of avoids, all these copywriting rules, it still will end up writing things in a very generic manner. I think it will get better though, of course. But it's not there yet. It's hard to
Yeah.
say. It's hard
And
to
you
say
mentioned
what's
the
going to come.
automations. Yeah, you mentioned the automations too, and I think that's something I have personally used lately. That it basically can take like a typical automation to get if it's something complex, you might have to give it 5 to 10 filters for it to actually do what it needs to do. Whereas
Hmm.
AI takes that out of the playbook, right? You basically just say, "Hey, look at this and tell me this," and that's the step, and it does it. And
Yeah.
that's the part that I've been putting a lot of time and effort into lately to implement that into our business because it's not just writing. It's not this. It can say, somebody calls us and leaves a voicemail about a maintenance request. Okay, well, it can take that and format it to our maintenance request. Somebody could text us. It could format that into a maintenance request because
Yeah.
I tried for years to get everybody to just file a maintenance request online. Nobody does it. So, but now
They're
it's like,
gonna do.
okay,
Yeah.
yeah, exactly. They're just going to do it the way they want. Okay, that's fine. I'll work with it. But now it
Hmm.
works, right? I don't have to make this
Hmm.
super. I mean, it's still somewhat complex, but the automation is basically just, hey, look at what was said here and format this into our maintenance request. That's essentially the automation, and it works pretty damn well. Like it rarely makes a mistake. It's pretty phenomenal. So that's something I think you guys are definitely smart to implement because it can make there's a lot of things that we think we have to do, and it's just
Hmm.
so hard. We've like done it for so long that you think, oh, I
Yeah.
have to be the person who does this, but it's very quickly it gets to a point where no, it can that part of it can figure out pretty quickly and keep things moving along.
Yeah. I'm completely shifting the way I think about basically everything. And when I'm out in the world, I'm not behind my computer, not doing marketing. I'm just out. I'm still finding the way I'm thinking about things really starting to shift the perspective of, what is possible? How would I go about executing this? It's just like a wide open, the world is your oyster perspective now. There are no limitations. If I feel like I want to do something, it's like, all right, well, let me first talk to my chat. Her name's Soli. Let me talk to Soli and we'll figure this out. And that's usually step one, where I'm just like bouncing off ideas, and her ideas aren't the best, but just speaking out loud when it would have lived up here and spun around in circles forever. Now that I could just like talk it out loud, it's like, oh, okay, I have just helped myself walk through the steps that I need to take, and now you need to implement it, and that does take one more step, but you can build in an automation, using Zapier or Make or N8N, using any one of those. Oh my gosh, the types of automations that you can come up with are insane. It's
Yeah,
amazing.
it's that's something I like. Probably a year ago, I hired a guy to just do some stuff for us, and it was okay. But everybody's talking about, oh, you want to buy back the time, you don't want to do everything, who not how, all this stuff, and I agree with that. But then when I learned how to automate stuff, it wasn't necessarily that learning it was useful, but learning to think about what could be automated is
Yes.
what has got
Yeah.
me to the point where I'm like, holy crap! Like there is so much. Like we just had a property management assistant leave, and I took over some of the responsibilities again and looked at it from this perspective of like, okay, what could we automate? And I was mind blown. Like typically, if every month we want to go through our collections, we've got to go one through one. We got to analyze this. That is essentially just saving the rent roll into a Google Drive at this point, and it handles everything else. I mean, I'm talking like looking back at that tenant's history of how many times they haven't paid, formatting the notices, whether they owe this much, that much, or this much, sending it to the attorney. I mean, it's pretty mind-boggling what it can do, and once you start realizing like how you can set those up, it really starts to open your eyes. Like, wow, I don't know what people are going to do in 5 years. Like, I feel like the only thing people are going to really do that's valuable is like one-on-one time with other people. I think that's the
Yeah.
one thing that you cannot fake, that people will just have to learn how to do all that stuff, because the people who are doing it manually are going to get creamed by people who have all that figured out, and they're just spending all their time in front of their clients or their customers or their investors or whoever it is. I think that's where we're going.
Yeah, and even right now, Heyraise is growing really fast, and I'm looking to, basically free myself up to go do more growth marketing, think about the next phase of the business. So we're hiring a lot of people, and as I'm thinking about our next phase of growth, I'm looking at who I want to bring on people who can help me automate, because it takes time and energy to map all this stuff out. I have to go learn all these programs, and that's probably not the best use of my time. So instead of hiring the typical roles that you would in a marketing creative agency, I'm now looking to hire like automation experts, prompting engineers, whatever these titles are. I'm still sifting through like who is the exact individual that I need, but that's the next step, because so much of what we need to have executed can actually be accomplished by leveraging AI and automations to make that happen. So that's where I'm really looking to put a lot of energy right now.
Yeah, it's fascinating. I think it's the combination of AI and automations that's really going to be the
Yeah,
disruptor. AI
it's
by
huge.
itself, like you guys still have to go in there and think and interact with what it says. And if you really want to do good, you have to read everything it says. But like when you can automate it, that's the next level to where it's like, wow, this is really, really. What is probably the most surprising thing you've automated so far that you're like, I did not think that was something we could do?
Right now in content creation, taking some raw footage, raw data from somewhere, sending it through like Cast Magic is a platform that we use. There's not, I mean, that's more of an AI platform, honestly, but it does automate a lot of the process of breaking down the content, long form content, whether it's audio, video, or written content. So that's been awesome. The way that you're able to give it specific prompts, you could do that in chat if you wanted to, but Cast Magic has been like the platform that's really brought all these different prompts together under one roof and giving you all the content at one time. So that's been an awesome platform, and I thought of that just because I have it up right now on this other monitor.
Nice.
But yeah, I mean, oh my gosh, my brain is spinning almost every day trying to figure out how do I get from A to G. Like, ultimately I want to get to Z, but whatever, there's so many steps in between to get from where you are today and where you want to go. But how do I jump to get there as quickly as possible and build in the steps that I need to get to the ultimate goal? And it's daunting, and there's a lot to learn along the way, but it's really exciting. Like everything is getting spun up in every day. Every day there's some new thing to learn, which is exhausting. But I feel like that's my job. Leading this agency is me staying ahead of the curve and understanding, what do we put on the side? What do we really focus on? What's actually usable? Where do we still need human power and a human brain? Because we still need a lot of those. You know, even though we can. So, for instance, one of the other things. Okay, to answer your question, one of the really cool ways that we are automating something is when somebody has a deal, we have a pitch suite. So it's the teaser, the pitch deck. These are kind of the traditional tools, but a landing page now, and we're able to spin up that landing page very fast within 24 hours. You can get your landing page specifically tailored to your deal. And we're using different AI platforms. I would never use this AI platform to build out a full website yet. Maybe the time will come, but for a landing page for a specific deal, this is a massive time saver and provides a ton of value. Ton of value. This landing page acts as a hub for the deal. It's a living space where we can update, automate, whatever it is that we need to do there. So that's been awesome. And that's really where we're looking to put a lot of energy, is like, how do we get all of these resources completed faster? How do we get there faster? And AI and automation is the way that we're doing that.
Yeah, and to your point about it going so fast, I feel like I've set things up, and then a week later I found out like the way I set it up was irrelevant. Yeah. Like I set up this super complicated system. It wasn't complicated, but it was basically, I have people go around on site, they take pictures of everything so we know, and they fill out these forms and rank it on a scale of 1 to 10 how clean it is. And then I just had one of the people on site just send me a picture. And I gave it a really specific prompt and said, took the picture, put it in ChatGPT. He's like, tell me what's wrong with this picture. And it's like, oh, their skirting's a little bit messed up. They need to coat the roof. And I was like, oh my gosh. Like, it knows that. It knows. It is that's the part that it's taken me a while to realize, but machines can think. Yeah. And so you basically have to train it like an employee. And once you train it like an employee, it works for you. It's very fascinating. So I don't know where that leads us in the world. I think people who are good at one-on-one stuff are going to do really well. I think people who buy into this stuff and stay ahead of the curve like you're doing are going to do really well. I think people who just kind of stick their head in the sand and say, oh, it's a fad. It's not that helpful. I can't do what I... That's the biggest one I hear. People saying, oh, I can't do what I do. There's AI fighter jets. Okay.
Yeah, I can do
You're
it.
You did not get as much training as a fighter pilot. Yeah. So yes, it can do what you do. It's just a matter of time. And that's the freaky part. That's but who knows?
But people that have that perspective are much respect. And I don't mean to diminish what it is that they bring, the value that they bring, but they really do need to focus then on what is it that AI is going to do, because you have to come to terms with the fact that AI is going to, somebody is going to come in and figure out how to use AI to replace you. Not necessarily, it's not like an AI robot's going to show up and kick you out of your chair at your desk. It's not really what we mean by this. But you have to figure out how you're going to leverage AI to do what you do better and provide, so that you could double down on what your unique ability is that you really do bring to the table. And like you said, it's probably the one-on-one relationship component. Just think, if you didn't have to do half of the paperwork, busy work that you do during your day, and you could just focus on being a people person and maintaining relationships and creating value for folks by educating and going to in-person events, because your time's been freed up because you figured out how to leverage AI and workflows and automations, how much more valuable you would be. Like, yeah, embrace it for that reason.
Yeah, it's going to get crazy, because pretty much you're going to, I think in 2 to 3 years, people are going to spend their entire day doing the most valuable thing.
Yes.
Which is, it's a huge advantage for people who are I think of lawyers all the time. You hire the best lawyer because they've done it the longest. They have the biggest database of knowledge of what can go wrong, and they've got the best track record of doing it. If that attorney decides to create an AI model that can create their legal documents to protect you as best as it possibly knows how, and like it just runs all sorts of iterations of different things that could happen and stress tests it and can get that to you in an hour, they're going to spend their whole day meeting clients. And if you're the guy who's still trying to like meet clients an hour a day and then write the rest of it yourself, you're going to get smoked and nobody's going to use you. And that's, I think, where that's the part of it that scares me. It's like there's so many people who just don't maybe I'm wrong, but I think I've seen it over the last 2 years kind of start heading in that direction. I mean, shoot, for what we do, I used to think I was the only person who was able to analyze a mobile home park deal as quickly and as effectively as I could. And our AI that we've built does it. It like
Yeah.
before, like when a deal gets sent to us, before it even goes in our CRM, it's looked at it and says, "Hey, we don't like this." And pretty much every time, I'm like, "Yeah, I agree. It doesn't make sense."
Yeah, you
It's
want to
freaky.
like check it. You want to make sure that sometimes these things hallucinate, if you will. That's the word that they use. It makes shit up, quite frankly.
Yeah.
So you got to check it, of course. And a lot of times that's depending on what the task is. It's as simple as saying, "Hey, chat, are you making shit up or is this for real?" Giving it a prompt like that, and it'll say, "Oh, thanks for asking, Adrian. Great point you bring up." That's the other thing that I'm concerned about. My ego is like through the roof because everything that I prompt it, that's a great way to think about this. You're absolutely right, Adrian. It's like it tells me back that I'm the smartest person in the room. And it's like, oh, this is not healthy. This isn't healthy at
No,
all.
it's not good. It's not
Yeah.
good. I can tell you, like, I have tried so hard to get mine to not do that because it's like from my background, like in the Navy, like people don't coddle you. They tell you what you need to do. If
Right.
you mess up, they
Yeah.
tell you, and you're the worst person on the world. I like that because you know what I don't do? I don't mess up a second time. But the
Yeah.
whole like, oh, that's a great idea, and it's not helpful. Like when you're trying to discuss something with it, and it's like, oh, that's a great idea. I had one where I was trying to use it to basically look at attendance balance and come up with a plan for like what we could do, and it would just say, oh, set them on a payment plan. I was like, no, don't do that. That's not going to help. And it just
Right.
kept doing it, even if it's like
Yeah.
explicitly do not. It is funny how it does. I think they'll probably figure that out soon, but it does just make things up. And
It
if it doesn't
does.
know, it will just create something, which is
Yeah.
I can't understand how that happens, but I don't know. They'll
Yeah.
probably figure it out
So
soon.
as amazing as it is, you still have to go in with caution, and don't trust it blindly. I mean, who knows what the next iteration is going to bring, but yeah, there's it. You still need to check it as a human for sure.
Yeah.
But yeah.
Well, Adrian, is there anything else that you'd want to share with people about, Heyraise, what you guys do, and the value you can bring to anybody who's in the capital raising field?
Yeah, I mean, I would say reach out for a call to figure out how we can help you with wherever you're at in your business, in your capital raising ventures. We've got, like I mentioned, capital raising suite where we provide you with all the tools that you need to get your deal launched. And a lot of the best time to start raising is well before you actually have a deal. To
Yeah.
set up your brand, set up your website, like make sure you look like the millions of bucks you're aiming to raise, and you'll be well positioned to go into your raise with confidence for sure.
Nice. Awesome. And the best way for them to get a hold of you is through email, through text, or what's the best way?
Yeah, come find me on LinkedIn. I think that's
Okay.
easiest. Adrian Rae on LinkedIn, or put in Heyraise on LinkedIn. Either
Gotcha.
way, you'll find me or the company, and send me a message. We'll chat.
Perfect. Well, Adrian, I appreciate you taking the time to walk us through this and share your knowledge of what's going on in the field. And it's been super informative to me to learn about all this marketing stuff. It's not a part of my brain that functions at all. So I always like picking your brain as much as I can. So appreciate it.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you for having me, and thank you for all of your questions. Super valid. I know a lot of other operators out there are wondering and thinking the same things. It's a moving landscape all the time, but the foundations are pretty firm in, you know, the foundations of marketing don't really change all that much. There's just the tools that we use and the speed at which we implement them. That is changing all the time.
Nice. Awesome. Well, I appreciate it. This was great.
Yeah. Thank you, Jeff. Appreciate it.